Good morning. My name is Detective Zach Scott. I'm with the Broward Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit, and I'm one of the lead investigators on this case. We're going to go through the events that occurred in the 1200 building utilizing a computer-animated visual as far as movement of the suspect. There's going to be some information that obviously we're unable to share at this point due to the fact that we do have an ongoing criminal investigation. There's going to be some information that we're not going to be able to share because we also don't want to inspire others. Unfortunately, we do know in these cases a lot of times they do research previous events. But I do think this will at least give you an idea of what occurred. On February 14th, our suspect approached the 1200 building from the east side, which is the direction of Pine Island Road. This is your schematic for the first floor of the 1200 building. East would be to my right. If we could pause here for a second. Just to give you an idea, as far as the color coding in this visual, the green dots represent students, blue dots will represent teachers. As people who were part of this incident are injured, the dots will change to yellow. Fatalities will be a purple color. The suspect in this case will be a black dot with a line through it. Okay, if we could pause here. As you can see, we have 3 students that enter through the east side door, followed by the suspect. We also have other students that are in the hallway as well. This is at that time you see at the bottom is the time code based on the information we have from inside the 1200 building. The shooter enters the stairwell immediately to the right. He's carrying a rifle case at that point. A witness enters the stairwell, if we could pause here, as the suspect is taking the weapon out and preparing it. He makes a statement to the witness, who immediately flees and seeks help. Okay? And if we could pause here. As the suspect enters the hallway, he begins moving west, and he immediately opens fire. As you can see, we have several victims there on the south side in front of the doorway to 1215. They immediately come under fire and are injured, and these injuries eventually become fatal. Further west, you see another victim. That victim is also injured and takes shelter, but is able to get to a position of cover and survives injuries. At this point, if we could pause here, the suspect goes to classroom 1216 and fires from outside of the classroom into the classroom. He strikes 4 students inside this room, one of which is instantly fatal. 3 other victims are injured at this point inside that classroom. Now, at this point, during the first series of gunshots, that triggers the fire alarm system on campus, not just in the 1200 building, but also elsewhere. Now, also during this video, there are times where the information is somewhat obscured, and we don't know necessarily exact movement. So when you're watching the visual, you may see that the suspect dot stays stationary. At this point, after firing into that classroom, he does pause momentarily, appears to be taking things out of a backpack that he does not take with him before continuing. And again, there's going to be times where the time code is accurate. It's just that visually we are unable to determine his exact path. Continuing west, as he passes the previously injured victims, he does fire additional rounds. He then begins to fire into classroom 1214, again from the outside in. If we could pause there. We have 2 victims that are struck fatally in this room and 4 additional victims who are injured. The suspect then, we can continue, continues back to the north side of the hallway and then returns back to the door of room 1216 where he fires additional rounds into that classroom. We have 2 more victims who are struck fatally and another victim who is injured. If we could pause here. Now on the far my left, which is the west side of the hallway, you'll see that another victim has entered the 1200 building. The suspect immediately sights in on this victim and fires several rounds, striking the victim who is injured. That victim then is able to take cover. Okay, we can continue. And if we could pause here. Suspect at that point goes to the outside of classroom 1213 and again fires into the classroom from the outside. We have 1 victim who is struck fatally and several others who are injured. We continue. The suspect continues west. As he passes the previously injured victim, he fires additional rounds, and those wounds are fatal. If we could pause here. As the suspect enters the stairwell to proceed up to the 2nd floor, another victim, as you can see from the graphic, is entering on that west side stairwell door. As the suspect enters the stairwell, the victim is opening that door and is immediately shot fatally by the suspect. And continue. Now the suspect proceeds to the 2nd floor. There are no victims in this hallway. If we could pause here. As the suspect continues in an eastward direction down this hallway, he does fire into 2 classrooms on the 2nd floor. However, no victims are struck by gunfire. He fires several rounds into a north side classroom 1231. These rounds actually travel through the classroom and out the exterior windows. He's then going to move on to room 1234 where he fires several more rounds that also travel through and out the exterior windows. And you can continue. The suspect then continues to the east side stairwell where he's going to advance to the 3rd floor. And if we could pause here. On the 3rd floor, we have a response to the earlier fire alarm that is still going off at this point. So you do have several victims and witnesses that are outside of classrooms. As the suspect comes onto the 3rd floor, there is a victim in front of the door of 1256. He immediately shoots that victim and begins to shoot westward down the hallway at the other victims and witnesses who are in the hallway. We'll continue. And pause here. As you can see in 1255, we do have another witness who was struck by fragments and does survive their injuries. Further down the hallway, you can see 3, actually a total of 4 yellow dots. These are all victims who were initially injured by the gunfire. Continue. And pause here. At this point, the suspect turns his back to the rest of the hallway. We believe at that point to reload his weapon. When he does so, several of the students and faculty that are trapped in that hallway are going to try to run for the stairwell on the west end. Continue. And pause here. As that group of students and faculty make their run for that stairwell, the suspect does realize that he's got more victims moving in the hallway and opens fire. We have 2 victims that are struck with fatal injuries and another who is injured. Continue. And pause here. As the suspect continues west down the hallway, as he passes victims he is earlier injured, he fires additional rounds at these victims, injuring them fatally. He passes one victim who's in the middle of the hallway there, who does survive his injuries. Continue, please. And if we could pause here. Now, room 1240 is a teacher's lounge on the 3rd floor. It's on the west corner of this building. This is an unoccupied teacher's lounge. At this point, the suspect shoots the glass to this door to gain access and enters this teacher's lounge. The lounge has windows that run its entire west and south side. It gives a clear visual of the rest of the Stoneman Douglas campus in those directions. Understanding that the rest of the campus is responding to a fire alarm, most of the students are out of their classrooms and outside the school. Continue, please. From inside this lounge area, the suspect, over a period of approximately 2.5 to 3 minutes, and again, we have some visual issues here, so we don't know the sequence exactly. But at some point, he fires 5 rounds in a west direction from inside the 1200 building out towards the students that are outside. He does the same thing in a south direction, again, towards the students who have evacuated the buildings in response to the fire drill. Due to the construction of those windows, as far as the materials that they're made out of, exterior windows of the building, the rounds fragment and splinter immediately, and they do not find targets. Now, during the same time period, the suspect conducts at least a reload. The suspect then leaves the teacher's lounge and goes into the stairwell on the 3rd floor landing. And if we could pause here. On this 3rd floor landing, the suspect leaves his rifle, as well as other equipment that he had brought with him during this incident. He then flees down the stairs and out of the building You can continue, please. At that point, we track his movement. He flees the campus in a southwest direction, eventually getting in with groups of students that are leaving the campus in response to the alarms.